Hello, hello. Thanks for coming. Whew. So I have been wrestling with tech setup, and so I finally have things going. All lights, cameras, computer, everything is working. I was so excited. Years ago, I had an office job, and I was needing some IT support, and the IT guy, once he pinpointed the problem, he looked at me and said, "Kelly, the problem is in between the keyboard and the chair." And I looked down to see what was in between the keyboard and the chair, and it was me. Oh dear. Anyhow, welcome. I'm Kelly Vaughn from KnitSwag, and we're going to be talking about Number Knitting by Virginia Woods Bellamy. And this is the original modular knitting book, but what I've discovered recently in my research about Virginia and about her work is that she was a very, very accomplished poet. And I knew that, because I've read a couple of other articles by some other knitting historians about her, and I knew that about her, but as I've been researching for this show, and I'm learning the depth of her work, and it went on for decades. I mean, from like the 20s all the way up until 1976, I believe, when she passed. Right after she passed, her second book was published, and so she had a solid more than 50 years of publishing that she did in her life. Wow, that's pretty amazing. Hey Lisa, hey Christina, welcome. Yes, you're new here. Welcome to the live. I thank you for coming back after, last week we had some little technical glitches and I wasn't able to show off all the things that I wanted to. But now my computer screen is working, all my cameras are working. It's spectacular. Anyway, so if you're new here, I do, when I find hard copies of this book online, I like to post them down below. I think last week or the week before that I found one on ebook, and this week there's one on Thrift Books, and it's a little cheaper. It's only $168. So, but it is a hard copy, and that's kind of nice. And I do have also, I went through and I digitized the whole book, and I have that available and as an ebook in my shop, and the link is below. And I also redrew all of the charts. I spent a couple of years redrawing all the charts, and I'm still knitting my way through them. But anyway, if you get the ebook, I will include all the new and improved digital charts for you as you wish as well. Anita, hi Anita. Okay, so Virginia's book of poetry. So this was published right after she passed, and one of her friends was named Thea Wheelwright. And if you remember, if you look in the number knitting book, I'm going to bring it up real quick. There is the name Wheelwright is mentioned. It's mentioned several times in the book, and on page 170. There's a young Wilder Wheelwright wears the boy's version of the fireman's cap. And so if you look for that name, it's got to be in here at least a half a dozen times. Oh, just kidding, just two. Yeah, there's two times. Wilder Wheelwright is mentioned in the front, and then Wilder Wheelwright is mentioned on page 170. But what was the reason I went down the kind of the Wheelwright rabbit trail this particular month was because Virginia's book of poetry it's called And the Morning and the Evening, and I guess I kind of hadn't been emotionally ready to read poetry, because I'm not really into poetry. I read historical stuff and documentary type stuff and technique types of books, but I'm not really into poetry. But the more I've been learning about Virginia and about her history and all the different places that she had her work published, and there was a lot. I'm learning about her family and, the loss that she suffered through the loss of her son, and just like, then getting divorced and like moving several places. It's like, ooh, I feel like I'm finally ready to like read her poetry and feel it. And I wasn't there even 6 months ago, but now it's like, I think I could feel a lot more of what she was trying to express. And so anyway, I finally went out and got a copy of this book, and I found it on, I think it was Thrift Books. And I bought it from a publisher. He was in actually Blue Hill Falls, Maine, which is like just down the street from where Virginia lived for some years. And I was like, well, this is the guy that I want to buy the book from. And it came out in incidentally, it came out, this is a hard copy, like a hardcover. I've never seen this before. It's got 2 ISBN numbers. It's got the deluxe edition, which is this hardcover, and then there's also a softcover edition. And she dedicates it to her children. And so I was reading through this book of poetry, but before I get into it, I wanted to read this thing in the back. It says 1,000 copies of this limited edition have been printed on Warren's old style laid paper, substance 60. Of these, 75 numbered copies have been bound in Weyerhaeuser and Dora paper over boards. This edition was designed by William Burton, set in monotype Bembo, and printed by the Out of Sorts Press. And I don't know if you can see it on the screen if it's a little too light. This says number 4. This is number 4 out of 1,000. And so there was 1,000 copies of this 1,000 copies of this hardback cover printed. And so then if we flip over to, hi Maura, if we flip over to the publisher's note, this is, I think this is important, because this wasn't just like a publisher bureaucrat. I mean, I've never had a book published, so I don't know like how that like publisher author relationship generally works. But like the woman who wrote this publisher's note was Virginia's friend, and not just her friend, but like her friend for decades. Her kid, Wilder, appeared in Virginia's number knitting book, and so the relationship between this publisher and Virginia goes back a long time. And this book was published by the here we go again, the Bond Wheelwright Company. And so the guy who started this company, his name was, I think it was William Bond, but he went by Bond. That was his first name, and then Wheelwright. And so it was a husband and wife team that had this publishing company, and called the Bond Wheelwright Company, and they specialized in like historical, nonfiction, Northeastern America, like very academic type of books. And they've been doing it like since the 20s, so a really long time. They had a vast library, lots of authors, and they did it for, I think they finally closed up shop in like the 60s, because I think Bond Wheelwright passed sometime in the 60s. But like they did this for like 40 years. And so Thea Wheelwright, Virginia's friend who wrote the publisher's note, she had a lot of decades of experience, like not just with Virginia, but with other authors. And so let's see what she has to say about Virginia. She says, of all the persons in the literary and artistic worlds whom I have known, I believe that Virginia Woods Bellamy was the most creative in the largest sense of the word. She turned suffering into a tap of energy, inventiveness, awareness, and love. For a long time, I had been aware of the quality of her poetry, and when early last summer I suggested it was time this company publish a sampling of it, she joyfully put aside everything else and was set about selecting the poems from at least 100 times as many more. Now, just for a little kind of frame of reference, this book was published in January of 1976, and so when she was writing about last summer, that would have been summer of 75. Okay, This book became my excuse for increasingly frequent weekend visits to Castine, Maine, to that small, exquisite, packed house on Water Street, where displacement of any one object caused a chain reaction of total rearrangement. Those summer days became kind of a nightmare in slow motion when Virginia became ill and the true nature of her condition was discovered. She had always handled time fluidly. Now, for her attitude was contagious, we believed as though there were no need for haste. We went bargain hunting for the colorful, elegantly feminine clothes Virginia loved to buy. We conversed for hours, or more truthfully, I listened while she gave me fruits of her long life, until she was too weak to knit. On each visit, she showed me a new creation or design in number knitting, an art form which she had invented during a period of enforced inactivity and to which she turned for relaxation. Finally, we would tackle the poems. New ones were being written all the time and old ones rediscovered. Each of those we selected had to be read and reread, sometimes revised. They often brought up personal memories that led Virginia into further disclosures in a poignantly growing self-portrait, while her physical body dwindled before my eyes. She did not fear death and often considered the subject in her poems. She faced her illness with courage and with a sense of humor, but she did hope for reprieve. Death was hard to accept just then, with her mind so active and so full of all she wanted to do. For a while, it seemed that Virginia might have more time with us, but she died January 31st, before she could autograph the sheets for the numbered volumes of this limited edition. Look again as the traveler grows taller, breaks into a run. April 1976, Thea Wheelwright. Okay, so that kind of that loving note from Thea kind of makes me, like, I knew just from reading number knitting, like, how much Virginia loved people, because she mentions in her book, she thanks everybody from her lawyer to her mailman to her high school, her daughter's high school English teacher. She thanked everybody. And so for the first time I got to see, I've never even met her. This is ridiculous. I got to see how much she touched the lives of her friends. Anyhow, I thought it would be fun to read some of her poems. Like, maybe I'll read one every week. I do a session, and so I'll start at the beginning. A lot of her poems are like, they're very seasonal because she lived. I've looked up the streets where she lived, because I found a number of the addresses that she lived at over the years, and they're always like these down like long wooded roads and like out in nature, and she always lived by the water, and so she was very much in touch with like the world that was going on around her, from the lakes and the rivers to the birds and the squirrels and the frogs, and like she wrote about all those things, which is awesome. I mean, she was a literary giant, and she wrote about squirrels having lunch. I love that. So let's read. This is called Mouse. It's on page 7. Mouse, frightened of hush or noise, of cats, of cheese decoys, of water, light, of his own appetite, observe in any house the little mouse. How desperate his need to breathe and breed, how dazzling his delight that girds with might and arrogantly enjoins his tiny loins. Too terrified to wait at lightning gate, he enters quaking where death haunts the vasty air, up from the mousetrap's manger, through waiting claws of danger. By nibbles, gnaws, and bites to attic heights, when all is said and done, such courage has no one in his own echoing house as the small mouse. Oh dear. And there's so many more. That's awesome. So it got me to thinking about, like, okay, so for like, starting in the early 20s, maybe even in the late teens, she was getting published in magazines. So teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, she's doing poetry publishing and like children's operettas, and like very involved in the not just the literary world with like her poetry and the magazines and stuff, but also writing like song lyrics, and then she'd partner up with composers. And she did that for decades. But then come the 1940s, she's a single mom living in Maine, and she starts knitting. I mean, she's been knitting for decades, but then like in the 40s, she starts like knitting publishing, like being a published author into all the Women's Home Companion magazines and McCall's Needlework. And she does that for probably a good 10 years. I think we have record of like from 1943 or 44 all the way up to 1952 when her book was published. And then even in, she had some like in, I think in 1953 in a few magazines. So for a good 10 years, she was doing knitting publishing. And it got me to thinking, like, have you ever met anyone that has worked in two fields, not just like at a low level, like, yeah, I've worked at Taco Bell and I've worked at Home Depot. Like, those are two industries, right? But like, you know, I made minimum wage, so I can't really say that I worked in those two industries. But she was like well known and highly respected in two different industries. And I think, like, good gracious, that's really interesting. Like, if you've ever maybe, like, I had a college professor, he was a PhD English professor, and I think he taught, he might have taught some pre-law stuff, because at my school, the English and pre-law were kind of like in the same department. And then it turns out, he mentioned during class one day, like, oh, by the way, I'm also a lawyer. And we're like, hold on now, we thought you were like a PhD English professor. But he, like, in his free time, while, you know, being a university professor, he also decided to go get a law degree. And that's, like, they're related, those are both language, but like, that's two different fields. And I think Virginia kind of fell into that same camp. Like, she was a very well-respected, you know, poet and author, and then she became a very well-known knitting designer. And I just like, dang, that's awesome. That's so amazing. Anyway, that's kind of what I've been kind of going through this week, because she's so great. Okay, another thing I found this week was I found another unpublished photograph that I'd never found before, and I don't think anyone else has ever found it either and known what it was. I found another unpublished photograph of one of Virginia's patterns. And when I say I don't think anyone's ever found it before, like, I don't think any other like knitting researchers have found it before. So let me bring that up real quick. It's I was experimenting with different search terms, because I can search for Virginia Woods Bellamy, like all in quotes, and that's easy. Like, you can find the standard things about her, like the normal articles, like that, you know, the other knitting researchers have found, and that's great, that's fine. But like, when you start to play with the search terms, like Virginia Woods McCall or, you know, V.W. Bellamy, and mix it up a bit, then you can find some interesting things. And the way that I found this particular picture was I just looked for the word number knitting. That's it. And it came up. It didn't come up under Virginia Woods Bellamy. It didn't come up under V.W. Bellamy. I mean, if you search for Crown Publishing, there's probably a million listings, but I searched for the word number knitting and it came up. So let me show you that, because I think it's worthwhile, like, from a researching standpoint, to like know like how to manipulate the search terms. So check this out. So this is from a 1952 edition, 1952 to 1953 edition of Handweaver and Craftsman. And there's no article in here. Like, some of the other issues have like a whole advertisement about her correspondence course, or they've got an article about number knitting. This one does not have that. What this does have, it's got this picture of fireman's helmet from a design from Number Knitting, the New All-Ways Stretch Method by Virginia Woods Bellamy, Crown Publishers, New York. And what's interesting is that if you look here, the way that her name is spelled, it's hyphenated. Like there was a line break and they had to put the hyphen there. And so that's why it didn't come up in the search if I just typed Virginia Woods Bellamy. But I think this is so cool. She looks so, the model, she looks very kind of like an elf. Sort of like an elf, I guess. But what's really interesting about this, let me bring up this one. That's the same, this is the same pattern. Young Wilder Wheelwright has got the fireman's cap. And if we look over here in this, it's the same pattern, but it's like they folded it up. Maybe there's like an extra triangle in there or something, because it looks like it's bordered in, I don't know, Angora or something, but there's three like stripes of this Angora. But if you look over in the original pattern, there's like, there would be one edge here and one edge here. And so I don't really know how they got that whole three stripe thing going on. Yeah, I'm not sure. Another thing that's interesting about this is that it appears that the same model was used. Because that looks to be the same girl, and maybe even like the same photo shoot. I'm not sure, because she's got like that wingtip eyeliner thing going on, and here she does as well. So yeah, I'm not sure, but I think that's the same girl. Anyway, I thought that was pretty exciting. I burst out with excitement when I found that picture. And Steve's like, "What's wrong?" It's like, nothing's wrong. I'm so excited. Oh man. Okay, I also was I was talking with you all about the Bride's Encyclopedia. I had to return it to the library, but not before I scanned it. And so if you look down in the description of the video, you're going to see a link to the file. I uploaded it to archive.org, and I know I prepped the file wrong, but like I'm not all that concerned about it. Like each page, when I scanned it, like each page, like this is one page, and then this is another page, and so it doesn't flip quite right, but like it's still there. So I'll show you that. Hey Bob, welcome. Oh, Anita says, on the child photo, the knitting direction changes in the neck. Maybe that's where the 3 fuzzy lines is. Oh, yeah, let's take a look at that real quick. So, where was that? That was Wheelwright. Oh, you're right. So they could have done one like Angora thing here, like on the edge, and then maybe like another strip of Angora there. Uh-huh. It looks kind of pointed though. It's almost like there's 2 triangles. Because in this in the chart, where's the chart? Oh, here it is. These charts are so confusing. 2 squares make a fireman's hat. So that would be this down here. So I'm thinking maybe what they did is they did 3 squares, like they did 2 of these for the front and then just kind of folded them differently and then did one for the back. That's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm gonna have to make one of those. Like, I don't have enough knitting to do already for all my my projects. Yeah, so I was talking with you about the Bride's Encyclopedia, and I wanted to show you what I did with this. And the reason I scanned the Bride's Encyclopedia, it was listed. Let's see. It was listed here in the back of the number knitting book. It says other volumes in the Crown Homemaker's Library. And the Bride's Encyclopedia, edited by Dorothy Sarah. It's got 17 homemaking experts have compiled a rich storehouse of information covering every important subject, from beauty care to the most minute details of etiquette, budgeting, and household hints. Hundreds of illustrations. Yeah, so I've read it before, and I decided to check it out again, but this time I scanned it. So let's take a look at that. The cover isn't very interesting. It would have been. It was sort of embossed. It's a little hard to see, and the cover didn't scan well. But what I did is I added bookmarks on the left-hand side, and I colored them to make them more interesting. Yeah, so download that. I broke it all up by section. So section 1, etiquette, section 2, entertaining, section 3, parties and games. And I also added each individual, like the chapter numbers, so that you can, easily click through this, this whole thing. Yeah, so that's my gift to you. I hope that you like it. It is entertaining. It is so entertaining. I was reading through it because I had to type out all the bookmarks because it doesn't make the bookmarks automatically. I did that, and so I was typing it all out, and it was just kind of like refreshing me like on how great it was. And some of the information is a little bit dated, like the part about calories, like how many calories that you need. So if you're a lady of leisure with no physical exertion, it says you need 1,800 to 2,000 calories. For average housework is 2,200 to 2,500. Active physical work such as gardening, sports, etc., is 3,000 calories, which is a lot. I think the U.S. government recommends average 2,000 calories a day for like all adults, like no matter what your size is. Yeah. So, but I got to think that maybe the calorie count recommendations were different back then, because maybe that, like so many things we think, we're more modern now, we're more educated. Well, maybe a little bit of that, but maybe they just did like more physical work, like hand wringing out their wash and like walking to the grocery store. And, they probably didn't have, I know that they didn't have like Roombas to clean their floors and like the lawn mowing robots and like all the things that we have now, like dishwashing, and we have a lot more modern appliances that enable us to burn fewer calories, and they wouldn't have had most of those things back then. So maybe 2,000 calories for a lady of leisure wasn't like that unrealistic. Yeah. Anita says on page 176, zoom in on the child. You can see the point. All right, let me do that. Oh. You are right, Anita. Okay, so the way that this hat would have been done, there would have been one edge here, and I guess there'd be another line of Angora right here. But how would she have gotten this third one? Because that would have been a rising edge. Maybe she like crocheted on after. Because it looks to me like there's a point here, like these are two separate things. But if you look at the kid, it's it's just like rounded over his head. Like there could be a line here, but there's not like that distinct point, like on the picture of the girl. Yeah, maybe I'll just have to chart one out and knit one up and take a look. Oh yeah, they did have less processed food, no doubt. Yeah, no doubt they had less processed food. Okay, I thought it'd be fun to also show you some of the other Handweaver and Craftsman articles that that I found about number knitting and Virginia. So this was 1950 to 1951, and so number knitting was published in 1952. I think it might have even been December of 1952, and so this was like a full year, maybe close to 2 years before the book came out. And so Virginia had been putting out, you know, her patterns through McCall's Needlework, and she, I think, had several articles in there about her, and then 3 different pamphlets. And here's my hunch. I think that, because I don't think Virginia was a hand weaver, because she never mentions like herself weaving. She mentions hand woven clothes, but she never mentions being a weaver. And I think that's an important detail. Like if you're in conversation with somebody, you identify as a knitter, right? That's like one of the most important things about it. It's like, I'm a knitter, and I would imagine that weavers are probably the same way. Like it's like a deep-seated part of your identity. You don't say, I'm someone who knits. No. So I don't think Virginia was a weaver. I think she was a knitter, and I think this author here, Louise Llewellyn Jereka, I think she probably was reading the articles in Women's Home Companion and McCall's Needlework, and probably reached out to Virginia about this, because I think Handweaver and Craftsman doesn't show up as in the list of like media outlets that contacted her, and there was a lot. Well, I mean, a lot for the knitting world. There was probably a half a dozen places that contacted her for like news write-ups, but that was after her book came out. So I think this woman, Louise Llewellyn Jereka, contacted her before and started writing articles in the magazine, because this again was 2 years before her book came out. So it's interesting to me that she's already got some of the pictures. She's got pictures of some of the items that are in the number knitting book 2 years beforehand. Like this blouse, this is called Evening Blouse, and it's in the book. This one, this is Winged Blouse. It's a little hard to see, but if we go over here, let's see, Winged Blouse. And I think, here it is. That's it. It had this little like white thing in the front, and so that's what this is. So Winged Blouse, Evening Blouse, and then she's got these little placemats, which I think those are the tropical leaf placemats. So Virginia already had a bunch of stuff already knitted up and like ready to go 2 years before her book came out, and so Louise Jereka wrote this great article, which it reminds me very much of the introduction to number knitting, and it goes on for pages, at least 3 pages. And these 2 shawls, they appear in the book, but they're different pictures. like this is a different model than I think was modeling it in the book. And I was looking at this. Let me minimize some of this. That one. Okay, so we've got these two patterns here. This one is called butterfly wrap. So let me find that real quick. And I think it's noteworthy. Butterfly. It's noteworthy because she's got here we go, the butterfly wrap. It's the same chart, sort of. It's a chart for the same object, but she redrew it. So here's the 1950 version. It goes 1, 2, and 3. And it's on 3 divided squares. But then if you go over here to the one actually published in the book, the order that they're knit in changed. I mean, it's not a big deal. It's going to give you the exact same thing, but I do think it was rather interesting that like she actually redrew the charts for the book. Yeah. And I think, yep, the box number is the same. On this one, she put the gauge right in the chart, and she didn't on that. And I guess in her later editions of the patterns, she would move the gauge to kind of this format here instead of like on the page with the chart itself. But one thing that's I think really interesting about this article from Louise Jarecka is that it's, of all the number knitting articles I've seen in like, I don't know, a half a dozen different magazines, maybe like 4 different magazines, I believe this is the only one of them to actually include any sorts of charts. Like usually they say, you know, this is number knitting, this is what it does, this is what it is, and like, you know, how great it is, and like they describe the chart and they'll show a picture of the finished piece, but like they don't ever include the chart. You know, they say write for instructions or write for the correspondence course. And so I just thought it was really interesting that this woman, Louise Jarecka, actually took the initiative to provide a chart in the book, which I think it's important because, like, as a knitter, I like charts, and I would think if you're, you know, inventing a whole new system of knitting based on charts, like, I would hope to see one before spending all the money, because, you know, it was $3.95, I think the book was, but, you know, that was back in the day. That was kind of a lot. DJ asked, I wonder what the winged blouse would look like as a colored gradient. Well, let's have a look. This is one I knit a few months ago, and it's not totally a colored gradient. Sort of. So there's 3 main colors used in the pattern, but what makes this particular pattern, what would make it difficult to do a gradient, is that the order of the yarn. So if you start here and it's like, let's say your yarn goes from like dark pink to light pink, that color would go like this, and then so you'd need like 2 balls of yarn to start at the same place to have it make sense, because like if you just have 1 ball of yarn, the order of the units, it's the gradients wouldn't line up. Yeah, it would be very cool in a gradient yarn though. I agree. So the winged blouse that I just showed, if we did have, I know we had at least one person doing it as a knit along. Like I knit mine first so you could see it, and then if you wanted to knit it, you know, for the knit along, that's going on until November 30th, and today's what, August 20th. So you've got like 5 weeks left. So if you wanted to knit this and possibly win a prize, the pattern is linked down below in the description box, so be sure to get that. There's also a stitch calculator over on my website, and that is linked down there as well. Because if you remember, in the individual, let me see, winged. In the original pattern, it only gave a single size, which was small to medium for a 32-inch bust, which is interesting because, like, I could kind of see that, you know, this young girl wearing this, she's probably about a 32. But the sweater, we determined after some sleuthing that the sweater is probably like going down to her hips, and she just like stuffed it. It's way too big for her, and she stuffed it into her dress, just based on the lines of the sweater. So, and I have a whole video about that. That was entertaining to try to figure out. But I did make a stitch calculator for that, so you can plug in your bust measurement and, you know, actually make a sweater that that fits you. There's also the we were working on the where is it? Here it is. The 5 points scarf. That was another one that we had. Another one of the old patterns, not in number knitting, not in the book, but I'd found it in a picture of it in a McCall's Needlework magazine. And so this is another option for your summer knit along. And that pattern is on the Knitwag website. So you just go to the website and you'll get a little pop-up with a picture of a girl wearing this, and you enter your email address, and you can get this this cute little a pattern for this cute little scarf. And I'm in the process of making the scarf, like another version of it that that is like, it's got slightly different color blocks, but the shape itself is the same. And so I am still working on that. I did want to show you a little bit more about some of the other Handweaver and Craftsman articles that I found. So this one is from the fall of 1952, and this was again before number knitting actually came out, before it was published. Oh, I thought it was published in December. It says, according to this, ready October 30th will be Virginia Woods Bellamy's book on number knitting, giving a complete description of her new patented all-way stretch method. And it talks all about the book and like what it is. And this goes on for 1, 2, and I think also onto the next page. So 3 columns. And then it references to the other article that we just saw called Number Knitting, A New Way with an Old Art by Louise Jarecka. And it gives the address for, you know, Crown Publishers for you to get the book. I guess you would just like mail them a check. I think so. I was going through another, I think it was a Call magazine today. Oh no, it was an old Columbia yarn magazine from the 30s. And it was advertising like needle gauges. And like if you wanted one, they said you need to go to your local dealer, your local yarn shop, and ask them to sell it to you. And if they don't have it, you can mail us 10 cents in stamps, and then they would mail it to you. So I don't, maybe the 10 cents, maybe that's how they would pay each other, was in stamps, because I don't know if you would like mail a check for 10 cents or a dime. I don't know, but it says that you mail us 10 cents in stamps. So I'm not sure. And it also said, if your dealer does not carry this needle gauge, tell us who they are. It read kind of threatening, like you need to tattle on them for us. That's what it seemed like, which I thought was hysterical. Yeah, the price of the book. It was only $3.95. Yeah, $3.95, which is great. I'd be curious to know like the price of, like with inflation, what that would be. Because I did the math on this at one point in time, and let's see if I can bring up my calculator. So if we do the math, so like 3.95, and it's there's 74 patterns in there. So that's like 5 cents a pattern, which that's pretty cheap. That is really cheap. And it's 274 pages long. I think that's cheap. But you could also get a needle gauge for 10 cents, and you could get one of her pamphlets. I think she sold her pamphlets for 50 cents, and they had 6 patterns. So if you were to take like 50 cents divided by 6 patterns in a pamphlet, that's 8 cents a pattern. So it's not too far off. I'd be curious to know like what the conversion rate would be. Like to today's dollars, like adjusted for inflation and all that. Like I don't know what the average salary of a writer in 1952 was. I have a feeling books generally were more expensive, because there was fewer of them and they were harder to produce. But nowadays we're, like if we have to pay $20 for a book, we're like, oh, heck no. We're as, modern American people, not all of us Americans, but like as modern people, we have just like more of everything. And so we want it cheaper. Yeah. Okay. So here's one more Handweaver and Craftsman to show you. Oh, just kidding. That was it. Those are the two that I had to show you. What year was it published? I found an inflation calculator. Ooh, it was published in 1952. So $3.95 in 1952. I would also be curious to know like what the price of a ball of yarn was back then. So like if you were to get like 6 balls of yarn for a sweater, like I've heard sweater quantity is like 6 balls, but like in a lot of yarns, they're like, it's not uncommon at all to pay like $25 a skein for nice yarn. That's like pretty normal. And so at $25 a skein times 6, more, like if you need more skeins to make a bigger sweater, that's like $150. So I wonder like what kind of price Virginia had to pay in like 1950 for a sweater quantity worth of yarn. Okay, so Christina says it was $45.57. That's what it would be. That's what this would be with modern inflation. And that makes sense. Yeah, that seems reasonable to me. And the fact that, you know, the book has been out for what, 70, just over 70 years now, and you can still, I mean, you can buy a hard copy on Thrift Books or ebook for like 175, like that. 45 doesn't seem all that unreasonable. Thank you, Christina, for sharing that. Oh, I have more notes on the back. Yeah. I had been working on bodice blouse. I kind of got a little sidetracked on that, a little discouraged, you know, because it was a frustrating experience. And I know that I'm like not the best at swatching, but honestly, I don't know that swatching, I don't know like how I could have done it any better. So if you haven't seen Bodice Blouse, let me show you what in the world happened with this. All right, so it's the neckline is absolutely ginormous. It's like, I think I measured it before and it was like a 21 inch neck opening or something. It's way too big. 14, I don't remember. And I think the last time, yeah, it's a 14-ish inch neck opening, and on me, a comfortable neck opening is about 7.5. And I think where I left this off with you all is that I was going to like fill in this area with more squares, like on a smaller needle, because like this whole thing, this is not happening. It like falls off my shoulders and it just doesn't work. And it's hard to stay focused during the summer because there's like so much light out and there's like places to go and people to see, and I was just a little discouraged. So I always, for years, I've only had one work in progress at a time, and I finish it and then I move on to the next one. But like, since I've been going through all these knitting patterns with you, I've been like, ooh, I want to do that one, and I want to do that one. And sometimes the sweaters, they like kick my butt. Like I could finish blankets. Maybe that's why I was always able to finish projects, like just have one on the needles. Okay, it's a blanket. You know, when you're done, when you run out of yarn, or you know, it's big enough to fit you. That's when you're done, and it's fine. But with sweaters, like you can't just like run out of yarn and call it quits. Or like stop when you get bored and call it done. Like that does not work at all. And so these sweaters that Virginia designed, they have been challenging me. They're oh my goodness. And I did redraw all these charts, and it's available down in the link in the description below. But good gracious, y'all. And the girl that's wearing it, where is it? Bodice blouse. Yeah, I am pretty sure this is Virginia's daughter. I'm pretty sure, because she seems to me to be the same girl in the winged blouse photo. Where's the photo of bodice blouse? There's another one in here. There it is. For some of the other models that she's not related to, she puts their names, like Wilder Wheelwright, and I think the Beverly Armston. There's a little girl, Beverly Armston, in there, and she puts their names. But for some of the models, like this one, she doesn't. And I think just based on my research, because I've researched all the names that she's mentioned in the book, and like the time frame that this would have been, and like how old this person looks, this appears to be a woman in her mid-20s, and I'm I'm fairly certain that is Jane Churchill Bellamy. And not long, I think a year after this book was published, she became Jane Churchill Bellamy Young and got married and lived in Blue Hill, Maine. And I think she's probably in here at least a half a dozen times. Pretty sure that's Virginia's daughter. But anyway, so she's a small figured woman, and yeah. And it does sit kind of like low on her shoulders. It does. Anyway, I'm still working on bodice blouse, and I'll probably pick that up here in another week or so once I I recover from the trauma that it caused me. Because I don't know about you, but like sometimes, like if a pattern really doesn't work out right, I just need to set it aside for a couple of months, and then I'll come back to it. And you know, a lot of the issues, like with my frustration, they'll be solved just by putting it in the closet for a couple of months. And then I can pick it up and, you know, and work things out, and like there's no hard feelings between me and the sweater. And I'm almost there with bodice blouse sweater. Not quite, but I will be pretty soon. Probably sometime in September I'll have like resolved my differences with the sweater, and we can continue our relationship together. DJ says bread was 12 cents in 1952. So about the cost of a needle gauge. That's consistent, because I've been looking at needle gauges online, and you can get them from like $10 to $15. I mean, you can get a loaf of bread for $2, but like what kind of garbage bread is it going to be? But like at a fancy bakery, like you could get a loaf of bread for like $10. You know, something like fresh and artisan and all that. So yeah, it's about the cost of a needle gauge. Bread. All right. Are there any other patterns or like things from the number knitting book, or even like the Bride's Encyclopedia that you think would be fun to go over while we're here together this Sunday evening? So I am I'm going to be out of town next weekend. I am not sure yet if I'm going to do a live stream. I'm going to say probably not. And I know the summer schedule has been a little bit like hit and miss because of, you know, summer travels and whatnot. But we'll be back home. We'll be back home after next week. And so it should get onto more of a regular schedule at that point. And I'll be back. Hopefully the next time I see you, I will have this issue resolved, and I can wear it and model it for you. That'll be fun. I do probably need to start another project, of course, because that's what I do. I am going on a plane trip. It's a cross-country plane trip, and all the projects that I have are sufficiently large enough that they would get uncomfortably tight in a carry-on in the airplane. So I'm gonna have to pick a new project to knit on the plane. I haven't decided what. If you have any recommendations, yeah, leave a note in the chat or in the comments. I'm thinking about this one. This is called the Greenwich shirt, and it's interesting because it's she, like all of her patterns, she does it on multiple needle sizes. So, unit 1 is on one needle size, unit 2 is on a bigger needle size, and unit 3 is on a small needle size, so that it like tightens up around the neckline. and then unit 4 and 5 are probably on like medium-sized needles, and it doesn't have a front or a back. And I think in the original pattern, the only place it's connected is here at the hips, and so it's like open from here to here, which seems kind of like a lot. That seems like a really, really big arm opening. And so maybe I need to do some research on the word Greenwich, because I'm thinking like Greenwich Village, like that's in New York, right? Like I don't know anything about New York, but maybe like Greenwich Village in the 50s was like, hot spot where they, wore more, I don't know, wild clothes. But I'm thinking like so you're a woman, not just a woman, you're a middle-aged woman or elderly woman in the 60s. Do you wear a shirt that has an opening all the way down to here? And if so, what do you wear underneath it? I don't know, because I think sometimes like Virginia, she was 62 when this book was published. She was no youngster. And the woman who knit this, she was the same age. She might have been 10 years younger. So Connie Small at this point in time might have been 52, but like she was no youngster. And so like if you're a middle-aged or elderly woman, what in the 50s, like what kind of undergarments do you wear? Do you know? Do tell. Copper, gold, and silver yarn does not sound soft. That's what I was thinking too. But because I make mental notes of all these yarns when I'm like out doing my travels and I'm visiting different yarn shops around the country, and I found some yarn that like met the qualifications. Of course, I don't have it to show you right now, but like I think what I'll do is on my trip I'll knit that little sweater, and it's like I think I got it in like either a peach or like a teal green, I forget. But it was mostly cotton and bamboo, and it had like a hint of metallic in it, and it looked like what I envisioned that sweater to look like, and it's soft, and I think it's going to look awesome, and I hope I bought enough. I'm not entirely sure that I did, but that's how I roll. Oh, a camisole. DJ says you wear a camisole under it, or maybe you wear it like a waistcoat or vest on top of a shirt. That could make sense. So like I have these great tank tops that I buy from Duluth Trading Company. I have them in I don't know, I have a lot of them because they don't have any scratchy tags. And I love that. And so I'll wear them like on hot summer days, I'll wear them just like on as a tank top. But they also make really great undershirts because they're tight and they're long and they like go all the way down, and I can tuck them in. They're called the No Yank Tank, and they're awesome. So maybe she wore something like this. Maura says tabards were often worn over a shirt and under jacket, but not tied at the shoulder. Is this a tabard? I've never heard of that word before. So it looks like it's tied at the top, like there's these little bead things. Yeah, what's a tabard? Well, I'm going to have to look that up real quick. Tabard. A tabard is a type of a short coat that was commonly worn by men during the late Middle Ages. So this is a tabard. Huh. That's interesting. It's kind of like just a over the shoulder sort of a thing. Huh. It was worn over a shirt and under jacket, but not tied at the shoulders. So maybe that's kind of like what this is. You just wear it over a, maybe you wear it, oh, maybe you wear it like over a collared shirt with the long sleeves. That would make sense. I hadn't thought about that, because if you were to put, because the picture of this, it just has it, it's just the shirt, and there's like nobody wearing it, and so it would, like, so I was just thinking like that would be kind of weird for a middle-aged woman to be wearing, or like a 62-year-old woman to be wearing like sleeveless, you know, like out on the town, or like is grandma going clubbing or what? But like that would make sense, like if you had like if not a collared shirt like this, but one that was more like crisp, kind of tailored, and then put like one of like that thing over the top of it. That would make a lot more sense. That would make more sense. I've seen shirts that are designed specifically for that, like they're called skinny shirts or something, like they have like this stretchy sleeves, and like the fabricy, like the crisp part is just like here and here, and like the rest of it is like stretchy, and it like contours to your body, so when you wear a sweater over it, it doesn't like get all bunchy and everything. So maybe that was kind of the idea, like you just wear a nice crisp like collared shirt underneath this thing. That would make a lot more sense. Yeah. Huh. I'm learning so much from you all. Thank you for your insight. Okay, so I'm gonna keep working on this little number, and while I'm on my trip, I'm gonna work on the Greenwich shirt, and it shouldn't take too long. What does it say? This blouse, while designed for a 28 to 34, will fit a larger size, since there is no seam above the waistline, unless preferred when fitted. No seam above the waistline. Well, now, are the triangles? Oh yeah, here it is. It says 3 double wing units front and back, 2 divided triangles joining the front and back. Okay. So you're knitting it on size, according to Virginia, size 11 needles, size 8, and 7, 3, oh no. Size 11, size 8, size 7, and size 10. Okay. Yeah, this shouldn't take too long at all. And these divided triangles are joined at the side seam. I could just pick up, these units instead of knitting them like separate, like 4 and 5. I could knit units 1, 2, 3 for the front and the back, and then pick up unit 4 on both sides and knit it as a divided triangle, and then pick up unit 5 on both sides as a divided triangle, and that way I wouldn't have to seam it, which I'm thinking I'll do. But you know, sometimes I have these grand ideas about like how I would do something different than what Virginia specified, and then I do it and I'm like, well, that was dumb. I should have just followed her instructions. So maybe I'm just going to do it the way she says. Because that way, if I do want the seam to go higher, I'll already be seaming instead of having it like not seamed at the bottom and then there is a side seam going up. So I'm just going to do it the way she says, because that'll be better. At one point in the 70s, there were a bit popular, over a collared long sleeve shirt. That is so good to know about. That kind of reminds me of this guy. This is the, what is this? It's a sleeveless No, it's called bare shoulder waistcoat. That's what it is. And it was so confusing to me because of the way it's photographed. And this looks weird flat. But I think I even took a picture of myself once that's on Ravelry. But it's the same idea. It's meant to be worn with the long sleeve shirt on, because otherwise it looks ridiculous. And because it's like this odd, like halter, like a sporty, it's like this sporty shape, which is odd. I don't know how you all feel about not halter tops, but like racer backs. I can't stand racerback shirts. They drive me wild. And this has got kind of like that racerback shape, so it's a little weird. It looks cute on. Maybe one day I'll wear it to a Christmas party or something. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll wear it at Christmas on this show. maybe. Yeah. Okay, I feel like I've got a good plan of action for going forward. I feel like it's been so long since we've been together that I lost my mojo. No joke, I spent like 5 hours on my computer today researching, like trying to get my brain together. And then my husband walks in, he's like, "How's it going?" And I'm like, "I have no idea. I don't know. I don't know anything about anything." He's like, "Yeah, some days are like that." I got all kinds of random tidbits and information about Virginia and her family from like World War I and World War II, draft registration cards to like passenger arrival records from the cruise that they took to Switzerland. Like I have all this random information and none of it has to do with knitting. So that's how I spent my day. Oh man. All right, I think that's it for me tonight. Thank you again for coming. It's always great to just, chit chat with you, other number knitting nerds, and learn about Virginia and her history and her patterns. And I'm going to say I'll be out next week, but I will be back the week after. So we will chat again then. All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.